matter doesn't matter. You know, Karl Popper, the great philosopher, said, matter doesn't matter. Modern physics shows us that materialism has gone beyond itself. Matter is no longer the ultimate principle. The ultimate principle is energy, and materialism is no longer a workable hypothesis. My point being that the things that we see going on around us, the material things, are the outformation of something deeper and inner. That the inner is more real than the outer. That the higher is more real than the lower. The spiritual is more real than the material. That you have an essence, you have a source inside of you that is far more real than the things you see out here. And so what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Well, the first thing you got to do is assume that it's true. If you just simply assume that God is real, what will show up, I guarantee you, are meaningful coincidences that move you along in life because God becomes real for you. You say, well, God is the center and also the circumference. But you are the center and you are the circumference, and this is something that is challenging, that was forbidden to be talked about at Columbia University 100 years ago. You couldn't say that even though Einstein came up with the thought. This is Anita Doyle, the science writer, saying Einstein's revelation that the universe is expanding in all directions means that every point in the universe is the center, and thus that every point is the point of origin. Every point is the point of origin. This point where your eyes are is the center of the universe. Now we think oneness. We're all one, right? Y'all agree we're one? What is that? Is it like soup? Is it like mush? What is oneness? Is it like we're all kind of mixed together? What is this? Or could it be that in every point in the universe, the whole exists expressing from a center? That anywhere in the universe, from any point, the entire universe is expanding. It's not like there's a center here and it's going out like this. It's like every point is the center. And that means that you are the center from which that God substance, that God love, the compassion, and the Word of God, the Logos, that creative something, that essence, the presence of pure being is expressing. And it's coming out from you. It's coming out from you at all times. And so, how does it show up in your life? It shows up in what we call meaningful coincidences. What are meaningful coincidences? Well, Carl Jung called it synchronicity. Synchronicity is just coincidences that look like coincidences, but they're not. You know, have you ever been in a field full of birds of the same species? Or one time I was there and there were high tension power lines above me. There were 1,000 birds above me, and I'm looking at them. They're making a lot of noise. And I'm listening to them. And then all of a sudden, boom, they all took off. You ever seen that happen? Uh-huh. And nobody went with the flag going, woo, go on, or, you know, it just happened. How'd that happen? You know, they've actually done photography of this, and it's faster than any signal could make them go between them, even if the signal was something that a bird could understand. There was no sound, there was no noise, there was no anything. What is that? That is that the connectedness of life, the interconnectedness of life. In 1666, and this is some nerd stuff I know, Christian Huygens invented the pendulum clock. Now, how many of you own a pendulum clock? Raise your hand. Well, this guy invented them, and he was also, in addition to being a scientist, a bit of an entrepreneur, and he wanted to sell these things because he invented them. So he made a lot of them, and they put them all in a room. And he noticed something the next morning after he put them all in a room, they were all swinging together. All the pendulums were swinging exactly together. And the scientists came up with a name for it. In 1666, they called it entrainment, and they talked about entrainment and how it's observable in all nature. Entrainment, this mysterious something that makes things kind of move together in divine order. In synchronicity, there's an implicate order. But they've never been able to explain it. And here we are, 400 years later, and they still don't know what causes it. What causes it? It's that something. It's that something that's at the center of you, that power that's at the essence of you. That's something that's going to answer your prayer if you align with it, if you get in touch with it. And God is always winking at us. God is always nudging us. God is always, there's a sense of humor in the universe. There's an incredible, a couple of stories about this. One time, I got on the same day from two friends on two opposite parts of the country, the same exact plastic toy of a dead chicken. You know, a dead chicken. One was attached to a key ring, and the other was a refrigerator magnet. They were identical dead chickens. I have never seen this dead chicken anywhere before or since, and both of them showed up on the same day with the identical note from two different people on opposite sides of the country saying, "Saw this, thought of you." Word for word. Now you say, what good is that? I need a healing. I need an answer. I'm upset. It's these little winks. It's these little winks. I got another story, and I've been dying to tell this story. Famous Unity minister. You know, I used to live about a block from the Rose Parade in Pasadena. And I'd have a party every year on New Year's Eve. And all these people were there, about 50 people. And a very well-known Unity minister, will be nameless because I think this was very humiliating for him, but it was hilarious. Because he's looking through my books. Now, I had 1,000 books. 1,000 books. And he's looking through them, and he notices one. It was Games Zen Masters Play. That's kind of a, I mean, does that sound like too weird of a title to you? It's kind of an interesting book, you know. Somehow, he just couldn't leave it alone. He said, Games Zen Masters Play. Games Zen Masters Play. What a stupid title for a book. I can't believe that anybody would write a book like that. I'm trying to get his attention. He's not paying any attention. He says, Games Zen Masters Play. I mean, what kind of an idiot would write a book and name it Games Zen Masters Play? And I pointed at the two people next to him and said, they did. They wrote it. They were standing next to him. Why? Well, what is this about? I don't know. Is God has a death wish? I don't know. But it's winking. It's the winking of the universe. These have these kind of things. They happen over these silly things. By the way, they weren't offended at all. They thought it was hilarious. They liked their title and they had confidence. But the point is that there's always these things happening. Always these things happening. But we don't see it. If I say to you, let's say you decide that you're not going to eat chocolate cake. Guess what? You're going to see all the time chocolate cake. It's going to be all around you. You're going to be inundated with chocolate cake consciousness. Because you're in chocolate cake consciousness. Because you're thinking about chocolate cake. It probably is the same amount of chocolate cake as before, but you're noticing it. And these meaningful coincidences, we call coincidences, are simply the affirmation of things that are always there. It's always there. Divine order is always there. Together, divine order is always there. I open my eyes to see it together. I open my eyes to see it. So you've got to have the open eyes. You've got to have the open eyes to see the evidence. What is faith? Substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And I love this wonderful quote, continuing in Romans. Paul has three things that he says that are aphorisms. Aphorisms or platitudes. That's a better word. What's the difference between a platitude and a practice? A platitude is something that your grandma crochets and puts up on the wall, and it stays up on the wall. But a practice is something you take down from the wall and you put it to work. So these are some things that we can practice. One is we know that in all things God works together for good for those who love God. What is that? That is divine order. That is praying divine order. When you affirm divine order, when you make the affirmation divine order, the crooked road is made straight and the rough places become plain. That doesn't mean I get what I want. It means you are put into a greater order than your own personal will. That's why there's that serenity prayer and that surrender to things that are higher. So because it's going to move through you in a different way. You got to dance with it. You got to dance with it. And sometimes it works out the way it was. Sometimes it works in a different way. But you can trust it. You can trust in the power of divine order, the strength in divine order. It will come through you. It will give you answers. This friend of mine was a Unity minister, and his church was struggling, and they had a copy machine, and it broke, and they couldn't fix it for Sunday to do the bulletins. And he prayed, and he went to sleep, and he dreamed that he went up to the copy machine and hit it in the corner with his fist as hard as he could, and woke up. Showed up at church, hit it, and it worked. You know, I don't know, you get these answers, they come through, and they just bleed through. They bleed through. They bleed through the invisible membrane between the invisible, which is more real than the visible, between the higher, which is more real than the lower, between the spiritual, which is more real than the material, and always forming out, always forming out. You are at the center, you're the center of the universe, and it's constantly moving out from you, always moving out from you, always expanding from every point in the universe, the identical way. That's called oneness. That means it could be diversity, because all the points are unique points, but the oneness is exactly the same thing. Here's another one. What shall we say? If God is for us, who can be against us? If God is for us, who can be against us? Well, how about all the bad things going on in the world? Well, as I shared a moment ago, those bad things going on in the world are part of an outforming and an evolutionary process that we are ready for because we can feel the stone in our shoe. Because we can feel the activity that the light has gotten so intense and bright that the darkness can't stand it anymore. It's making a whole lot of noise. Whole lot of noise. And we don't have to succumb to that noise, but we can overcome that noisiness with more light. Let your light shine. And I love this. This is continuing in Romans. He says, who shall separate us from this love? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? What can stand in the way of an unstoppable force? An unstoppable force moving through you. You say to yourself, okay, I've got a need right now, and it's not so lofty and it's not so whatever. That same need is being met right here and right now. But you have to start with assuming that God is real. Assuming that the invisible is more real than the visible. The spiritual is more real than the material. And assume it, and then watch what shows up. It'll be synchronicity. It will be divine order. I had it, and I shared parts of this in the past, but I had this situation once when I was in this situation. I felt like I was in Hawaii, and I felt like it was done. I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. So I prayed. I'm sitting in the Peace Chapel at Unity Village, and I'm saying, what should I do? And I got up. I just found myself getting up, going over to that Bible, and doing the old open up the Bible, put your finger down. And there was a prophet, and the prophet was having these experiences, and it was all complete, and it was all ready, and it was all done. And he left, and he went to somewhere else and had this wonderful experience. And I went, oh. And it was describing really in a feeling sense of what I was going through. And I thought, this is interesting, so I guess it's time for me to be complete. It had been 3 years, and I was ready to move on. Okay. So I went from there into the Unity Inn, the cafeteria, and a group of ministers is sitting at a table. I sit down with them, and one of them just says, so if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live? And I said, and then somebody said, Paris. And he said, oh, in the mountains. Somebody said, in the desert, on the beach. And I said, Palo Alto, California. And of course, they laughed. They said, oh, well, there's already a minister there, and there's no way, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, whatever. So then I fly home, and I talked to a friend who had lived there for many years, and she said, well, the apartment you're living in, pretty fancy apartment in Hawaii, there's only one in that whole city that's as good as that. But, it's so expensive, you could never live. I was living there 6 months later. And the way it happened was this. I got up the next morning, well, actually, it was a couple weeks later. I got up, and today's the day. Today's the day for what? I figured maybe I get an answer. So I got out on my porch and said, okay, what is we supposed to do? Let go of your pictures. Just let go of your pictures. Do you like that answer to prayer? Let go of your pictures? No, not at all, because it means letting go of attachments. It means letting go of expectations. It means letting go of your idea of the good. And one of my ideas of the good was I would never be an associate minister. No, thank you. I don't need to deal with that at all. No way. And so I showed up at the church, and in the mail came the listing of all the things that were open that day. And there was Palo Alto. They need an associate minister. And I'm reading it going, boy, that sounds like me. I don't know, but there's no way. There's no way I'm going to do this. And I'm kind of wondering, what's this all about? I drive home. When I'm done with the day, my answer machine's blinking, and I know it's him. I know it's the minister of that church. I'd worked for him when I was a student. And I knew to myself, if he wanted me to be there, he would have called me, so nah. So I go in there, and I push the button, and there he is. He says, hey, Greg, I know you wouldn't be interested in this or anything like this. You have no interest in being an associate minister, but when we wrote this whole job description, all we did is just think of you and write it all down, because you were the, so you're not going to want to do this, but call me up and let's have a laugh over it. Now, my grandmother was dying in the next 2 years, and she was there. And I was able to be with her. And this was the other church I tried at, but that was where I was supposed to be. And it worked out so beautifully. I could be with her as soon as she made her transition, and then I was able to move on. My point being that there is an implicate order. There is a divine order. It will move with you. It will move you. It'll move you in ways that will stun you, in other ways that you don't even notice. We think a lot, what's a miracle? Well, a friend of mine said, we don't believe in miracles in my church, we believe in ordinaries. Because they're part of the nature of reality. one time this was also when I was in Hawaii, strangely enough, and I was on the island of Maui, and there was a guy, and I've never told this story before, but it's been 30 years, so I can tell this story. My best friend was a Catholic priest in our community, and he was kicked out of the priesthood because he kind of crossed swords politically with a guy who wasn't even Catholic, but he kind of taken over the parish, and he wouldn't go along with this guy's stuff, so the guy worked on the head priest and got rid of him. The reason why I'm telling you the story is because then he started in on my church, and I was dealing with a lot of resentment towards this guy, and I'm walking around on the grounds of this beautiful estate, and just beautiful gardens, and I'm just, and how the light gets brighter and brighter, and you're in this wonderful reverie, and that brings up something, right? Love brings up whatever's in its way. So I'm sitting there and I'm standing there walking along this trail, going, ooh, this guy, ooh. And I go, okay, God, and I said it out loud, God, I'm ready to let this go. I'm ready. Help me to let this resentment go. I turn the corner, and there's this guy. It's on another island. He's walking right to me. And I go down the other trail. I'm not going to see this guy. And he does too. And we run into each other. I said, hi. And I lied. I said, good to see you. And then he said, good to see you too. I imagine that was a lie too. So anyway, so I said, let's sit down and talk. And we did. And I was able to talk. And I did, he didn't sit there and cop all this stuff. But I was able to work this out. I was able to work it out enough so that I didn't have the 7-step method. I didn't have all the journaling tools that I have now that can release and forgive these kind of things. So that was the best I could do, but it helped. My point being that as you work through, as you assume that there is synchronicity, there is divine order in the universe, that God is in charge of the universe, that you are the center, and every point, and your point right here, right now, is the center of the universe, expanding equally with every other point in the universe. Suddenly things become possible that weren't possible before because you're aligning with them. I align with my new possibility. Together, I align with my new possibility. So let's move into this new possibility. And set aside again your papers, and just know you don't need to have them right now. You can just let them go. And just move into this now moment. Yes, you can let that go right now. And move into this now moment. And move into this consciousness, this freedom, this peace that says, I believe that the invisible, the spiritual, the higher, is more real than the visible, the material, the lower. I believe that God is in charge of the whole universe. I believe that all things are working together for my good. I believe if God is for me, who can be against me? I believe nothing can separate me from this love. And I put myself at the center. Yes, I've always been at the center. But I don't experience it until I accept it. So I accept that I am at the center. This point, this particle that I am, is the center, and flowing out from me is all compassion, all love, all peace, all healing, all right outcome. And I even offer myself as a vehicle for the healing of the suffering of the world and the people that I'm concerned about. Moving out through me, great compassion, great love, even great joy and peace. Thank you, God, for this serenity. Thank you, God. And so it is. And now I want you to take a deep breath and let it out. And I want you to set aside all papers. Nothing to distract you. So if there's something in your lap or in your hands, just set it aside and open your hands. Open your hands. And take another deep breath and let it out. And feel the tingling of the energy in your outstretched fingers. Become aware That perhaps all meditation is just assuming certain truths are true and moving into those truths. And so we decide right here and right now that the spiritual nature, the truth of our being, is more real than the material. That the invisible, the things of the heart, the love, the caring, the compassion, the oneness, these are more real than the outer things. That the higher truths are more real than the lower appearances. And we align in this now moment with the inner, with the spiritual, with the invisible that is more real than the visible. If we just assume and know that God is real. God is underlying everything. I promise you what is showing up in that belief is divine order, right answers, a flowing outward from within of love, of purposefulness, of goodness, a good heart filled with love and yearning for freedom. Every point in the universe, including my heart, is the center of all the goodness of God, expanding, ever growing, ever learning, ever reaching out to bless. God, we may have felt we came in today with a need or a limitation. By moving into this knowing that we are invisible spirit, we are the inner higher self, that God is, and God is real. That the crooked road is made straight, the rough places plain. That divine order is now established. That all things are working together for good. If God is for us, who is against us? Nothing can separate us from the love of God. God, we are the inlet. We are the inlet of all spiritual, higher, invisible, inner essence. We're the inlet of your presence. And the outflow, the outflow of your presence. So let's just get into the feeling of that and know that our conditions of life are absorbed and healed in this. Move with this now. Invisible spirit, I am my higher inner nature, I am the inlet for all of the love and compassion, the wisdom and good answers, and the outworking of all good. And I am the outflowing of that good, that compassion, that love, that healing, the healing of the suffering of the world, the healing of the conditions of life. And I am grateful for that. I'm grateful. And so it is. I give in expectant faith, and I receive abundantly. Together. I give in expectant faith, and I receive abundantly. Now let's just take this thought and place it into our offerings or tithes, and we just place this expectancy, this faith, and this hopeful spirit. I give in expectant faith, and I receive abundantly. Together. I give in expectant faith, and I receive abundantly, and so it is. Amen.